Welcome to How Men Grieve number 4.
Number 4.
I'm Kay Rogers, the host, and I'm joined by my co-host Andrew Rogers.
Hello.
And Aaron Adams.
Hello.
And on this show, we have a special guest. Our special guest is Nicholas's stepfather, Mardy Johnson. Say hi, Marty.
Hi, everybody.
All right, so he was also impacted by the loss of Nicholas, as we well know, and he has a very unique perspective on how all this went down. So what we've talked about the last few podcasts, Marty, was kind of like my perspective, Aaron and Andrew's perspective, and I thought for this particular show, we'd go ahead and kind of pick up where you came in just a little bit later in the beginning of it. So if you just want to kind of maybe get us up to speed on kind of where you joined in and kind of what your first reaction was when you saw him.
Yeah, so I'd just like to maybe go back a little bit. I listened to the previous podcast, and I heard Andrew talk about how he had been to the hospital before, and he had been through this before, and I guess, as concerned as I was that night when you called Christine and she went to your house, as concerned as I was that night, I never thought it would reach the magnitude that it did. I kind of expected him to go to the hospital and they treat him and fine and he comes home, and obviously that's not what happened. So I guess my first, might call it my aha moment, was when I got to the hospital, and there are bits and pieces I remember. I know you guys have talked about this too. I don't remember who met me at the hospital.
I don't remember that either. Do you know, Andrew?
I walked into the emergency room. I don't remember who I talked to first. The only thing I do remember is walking down the hallway and walking into the treatment room he was in the emergency room, and I don't know who took me there. It drives me crazy, but I don't know who took me there. I remember walking into that room, and the room was full of doctors and nurses and working frantically, and I saw him laying there, and that was my aha moment. That was the moment I knew how terrible things were about to get for us.
Yeah, I think we all kind of had that same type of an aha moment when the reality of it was, this is really, really bad.
Yeah, I immediately went to pieces. I knew they were doing everything obviously they could do. They were working frantically, but one look at him was obvious. This was very, very serious.
Now, did you go to the hospital before you came and picked us up?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they had, so I had actually met them. Christine called me when they left your house, and she needed clothes or something, socks or something. I had actually met you at the corner of North Street and Main Street.
Oh my God, I totally forgot about that. I did not remember that at all.
As I pulled out of Devonshire, the ambulance went past me.
Don't be afraid to get right up on that mic there, Marty.
And so the ambulance went past me. I met you guys there. I gave her socks or whatever I was supposed to give her, and you guys took off, and I went back home. And the timeline, I have no comprehension of time. And I don't know how long it was before she told me that I needed to come. And I don't know. She had called her mom, Dorothy. All I know is Dorothy came to my house, and I immediately left my house and went to the hospital. And of course, you and Christine and Pam were there, and that's the first thing I did. I walked in the door. I remember walking in the door. I don't remember who I talked to first. The next thing I remember is walking into that room.
So when you got there, were we still down in the emergency room part?
I believe, yeah, I believe so. But my next memory is going upstairs. Like I said, I have bits and pieces from that night. Next thing I remember is going upstairs, and they put the four of us in a waiting room.
I remember that, yeah.
And I have no idea how long we sat there, and the doctor came in and explained to us what had happened, and in a very nice way told us that it was done and that he probably wasn't going to survive.
Yeah, and I remember that first. Yeah, I remember sitting in that room, Marty, and then that's when we had a doctor. I mean, I do remember it was a different doctor in the evening, and that doctor was the one that told us that we needed to take him off all the medication and the life support. And we had said we could not do that. We would take him off the medication, but we weren't taking him off of the mechanical ventilation or anything like that.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that. I had forgotten about that, but I do remember that now. But yeah, it was all so surreal. It was like we were in I don't know. Obviously, one of the worst times of all of our lives. And I try to walk through it. I try to remember stuff, but I can't remember things. There's a lot of it that I don't know if I shut it out. Of course, it's been 9 years too, and I'm old, and that has something to do with it.
Finally, somebody a little bit older than me.
But yeah, I guess I do remember that. I remember us saying no.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to do that.
No.
I have a question. How long were you guys sitting in that room before the doctor came in and talked to you? And if it was any amount of time, was there a conversation?
I don't remember much conversation. I think we talked about the situation at hand, but I don't think there was a lot of conversation. I mean, it was small talk. And
All right, go ahead and pick back up what your thoughts were, Marty.
So we're sitting in the room, and I couldn't begin to tell you what the exact conversation was, but yeah. So, and I don't remember leaving that room. And I know at some point we did when he went to the ICU. I guess going back, I guess I don't know. You just never expect that, you know. You never expect to go through what experienced that night.
And I think the loss of memory. Maybe I'm being a little overstating there, but you know, I think it's a protection thing. I think all of us remember certain parts, but there's a big bunch of it. And Marty, you and I were talking about that earlier about, you know, some of, you know, listening to this podcast and having different perspectives here and different viewpoints has brought back some things that I totally forgot about. I didn't remember meeting you at the corner to pick up socks or whatever it was we had to get. Totally did not remember that at all.
Yeah.
It is interesting to see the way everybody's kind of filling in blanks for everybody else.
Yeah, so then I guess the next thing I remember is being in the ICU, and I remember the doctor came back up, and that's the last time we saw her, I think. I don't remember doctors' names.
Oh, I don't either.
And I guess the next thing I remember is them bringing him to the ICU and us going in the room and being with him, and we came to the realization that we had to get the kids up there. And I guess, I don't know how it was decided, but me and Pam went and got the kids.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest with you. I just pulled an errand, sorry.
So I believe that was sometime early in the morning. Maybe 4:30, around 5 o'clock or something. I remember it being early in the morning, but almost daylight. Me and Pam drove to Washington, drove to the house, got the kids. Well, on the way to Washington, I called my mom, and I wanted to let her know what was going on, but little did I realize how hard that was going to be to explain to her until the phone started ringing. And I didn't know what I was going to say, because there's no good way to say it.
Right. If you don't mind, do you remember what you did say, or can you share that?
I had called her, and she got it. Of course, it woke her up out of bed, and I just remember her saying, "Is everything all right?" And I said, "No, it's not." And she goes, "What's wrong?" And I told her Nicholas had a bad asthma attack. That's the way I put it. He had a bad asthma attack, and she's like, "Well, is he okay?" And I remember those words clearly. I told her, I'm like, "No, Mom, he's not going to make it." And of course, she went to pieces. I went to pieces, and she asked what I wanted her to do, what I needed her to do, and I told her that I needed her to go to my house. Told her Dorothy was there watching Austin. Of course, Austin was asleep, and I told her I needed her to go to my house, and that was about the end of the conversation. It didn't last very long, and then of course me and Pam went and got the kids. I can't remember if Brittany was there. Brittany was there.
This is actually, excuse me, I don't think we've mentioned Brittany at all yet throughout this whole show so far.
No, that actually, I think she came in just a little bit later in the timeline. we had a hard time getting a hold of her. And I think what we ended up doing was
Aunt Crystal went over and got.
Aunt Crystal had to go over
Yeah.
and get her up in the morning, and I don't remember what time.
No, honestly, when you said it was early in the morning, it had always been in my head that it was in the middle of the night. I didn't.
It was dark. It was
Yeah.
very early. It was
Yeah.
dark when we got there.
Right.
I remember it being dark, but it was very early. It was like 4:30, 5 o'clock, somewhere around there. It was very, very early. It was still dark. You
Yeah.
are right.
Yeah.
And it kind of framed the timeline a little bit. I always think it's a little bit funny because when we talk about this, there's so much that happened, right? I mean, so much that happened. But Nicholas started having the asthma attack at 10:30 in the evening on Sunday night, which was the 19th. No, the 20th, excuse me. It's Father's Day. And by 4:30 in the morning, on that Monday morning, on the 21st, we were going to get the other kids and making the phone calls to have people come up and say their goodbyes because we knew he was going to be gone. And we knew he wasn't going to make it. Probably we knew hours before that. But that's the first opportunity that we had to leave and go do that. And I remember what you were talking about when you had to call your mom, Marty. And I had to call my mom and dad. And I don't remember what time it was I called them. I mean, and I'm with you there. The time became almost stood still. It's like it didn't matter because everything was happening so fast and so terrible.
Yeah.
We didn't even care. But I remember having to make that phone call to my mom, and my mom and dad were still in bed. And my mom answered the phone, and I was telling her what was going on. Of course, she, like you said, she just completely fell apart. And then I remember hearing my dad in the background going, "What's going on? What's going on? What's going on?" And she finally told him what was going on. And you know, you got to let him go because then you got to call everybody else. I mean, do you remember how many phone calls you had to make that day?
Actually, I don't.
I don't either.
I don't remember how many phone calls I made that day.
But I know it was a lot.
The ones I remember clearly were calling my mom. I think the only real call I made to my side of the family was to my mom because I knew she would call everybody else. And then later on that morning after we had, I don't know, it was probably around 6 o'clock, I had made a phone call to my work. I had good friends there.
Right.
You know, and I had made a phone call to my work and told my good friend Joe what was going on, and that was difficult. It was difficult to make all those phone calls. The one to work, make to your friends that you see every day and are such a part of your life and care about your kids, and you know, that was a difficult phone call. Joe's a good friend and he took it very hard. So that was a difficult phone call to make. And then I made another one to one of our friends, the friend of Christine's, a nurse. And I think that's all the phone calls I made that morning, actually.
When you were making those phone calls, and I don't know, Andrew and Aaron, I know you guys probably called your friends or did whatever. But I know.
I don't think I did.
No? What about you, Andrew? Did you call anybody?
No, I don't think I made any calls at all.
Really? Wow.
I called my mom that night. That's it.
I actually hadn't even given that thought until Marty said that. Until Marty brought up that he had to make a phone call. I hadn't even crossed my mind yet that you guys had to do that and inform people about what was going on.
God, I don't even remember. I know I had to call my mom, my dad, my buddy Keith. I called my sister.
They were difficult phone calls to make. It was difficult.
I think what made them difficult was every one you made everything seem just a little bit more real.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just saying it over and over.
You know, I think in the moment it's very surreal, like it wasn't actually happening. It just happened so fast, and the bad news and everything and I remember Marty, me, you, and Christine and Pam were sitting in that room, and we were just trying to figure out what had just happened, what is going on. Yeah. And then next thing you know, I mean, we had to make notifications to the family. We had to make decisions on how long we were going to keep him alive on the life support. And then we made the decision, of course, for the organ donation, which I will say is probably the best decision we could have ever made in that circumstance. And it's paid us dividends over and over again. And, you know, we really haven't talked a lot about that either. But I think maybe one of these shows we'll spend some time and we'll just kind of talk through what that was and what that did. It was an amazing thing. And you know, because we did the organ donation, you know, we gave the miracle of life to some people that otherwise weren't going to have it. Two of them being kids. So, but anyway,
I guess another thing I'd like to touch on, it was what you guys talked about, was autopilot. You just go into autopilot. And I think the four of us kind of did that night. As high a stress level as we were experiencing, I think we went into autopilot, you know. And we were concerned about our other kids.
I agree.
And, you know, as much focus as we had on Nicholas at the time, we were also focused on our other kids and wanted to make sure they were a part of it, make sure they got a chance to tell their brother bye.
So let's talk family dynamics a little bit. I guess we probably should explain a little bit that, right, Marty?
Yeah.
So Christine and I were married. We had Andrew and Nicholas together, and then we divorced, and you and Christine got married, and then you had two more children.
Right.
You've had Matthew and Austin.
Right.
Can you let us know how old Matthew and Austin were at the time when that happened?
Matthew had just turned 8, and Austin was 3 weeks.
Yeah, 3 weeks old. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. How did you even handle that?
The best thing I can tell you is Austin forced us to get up every day and take care of him, and he was kind of our savior.
Yeah.
He made us get up and take care of him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where we would be without Austin. Honest to God, I don't know where we would be without Austin. Because you knew you had to get up, take care of Austin.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how we dealt with it. Austin, that was not a negative thing in any way. Austin was a positive. It was difficult to go from the extreme, having a son, and then 3 weeks later, burying another son.
Yeah.
That was a little difficult to deal with, but Austin kind of carried us through that in the days after, in the years after.
It's awesome.
That is awesome. And yeah, it's funny, we've always all said is the time we spent with Austin and with each other over the years, and everybody's like, they're probably thinking, how do these guys get along? We do. That, you know, the divorce and all that stuff was a long time ago, and we're all much happier where we're at today. So,
Absolutely.
you know, we're good friends, and that's the way it should be, because we co-parented, we raised our kids. When I wasn't there to be the dad, you were, Marty, and I'm blessed that you were there in the boys' life.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love them like they're my own.
Yeah, and they are. I mean, they are. You've been in their lives as long as I have, for the most part. Ain't too much shorter. You think about it. But I know Austin, he's a madman. If anybody emulates Nicholas,
I'd say he just reminds me of Nick.
it's him.
Absolutely.
And everything he does, every way he talks, the charm, his smiles, even when he's being a bit of a turd, that's Nicholas.
Walking out of his bedroom in the morning with a blanket wrapped around him.
Hair sticking out all over the place.
Absolutely. I don't know. It's uncanny. It's uncanny how much Austin emulates Nicholas.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's uncanny.
You know, I've thought about that before too, and I've been a little in ways jealous of you and Christine for having that, because I always said, not that it replaces the pain, but it gives you that purpose that maybe you didn't feel for a while, and I wish, you know, and I'm glad that we've had Austin in our lives the way we have been, and not to take away from all the other kids, but just talking about in that moment and trying to deal with it and grieve. I mean, you said it perfectly when you said, you know, it's hard to go from having a 3-week-old son to burying your 11-year-old son.
Yeah, talk about an emotional roller coaster. Holy cow.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys pulled through that. It's indescribable.
You know, I have to give absolute kudos to my wife, Christine. She handled it like a trooper. I can't imagine anybody handling a situation like that any better. She's an outstanding mother. I think Andrew would attest to that.
Absolutely.
You have to say that. She's going to listen to this, and if you don't, she's going to kick your butt, Andrew.
I don't have to say anything.
No, but I don't disagree. I believe I mentioned Christine, and I think it was the first one or second podcast we did, and I just talked through.
It was just the last one, wasn't it?
Was it just the last one? Maybe it was.
I don't remember.
The strength that she had to have to go through something like that was not easy. And, you know, and not to take away from Pam, because she had to try to hold it together, not only for herself but for the kids. And while she was trying to hold it together, she was watching me collapse and not being the foundation of the family, and she didn't know what to do. That could not have been easy.
I don't think any of us knew what to do.
No.
I think we were all in a situation like that. I think the only thing you can do is wing it. None of us knew what we were doing.
There is no.
We weren't, and there. I don't think we were supposed to know what we were doing. This is not a normal situation. It's not normal.
There's no rule book that tells you, hey, if your kid dies, this is what you do so you feel better.
Right.
I mean, what I think what a lot of people don't understand in a particular case like this, with this type of grief, is and all grief in a way I think hangs around for the rest of your life, but this particular one doesn't just hang around. It changes everything. And it changes who you are. It leaves a big hole in your heart, and it impacts you for years to come.
There's a song that starts out, I wear this pain like a heavy coat. And I think to this day, we all still wear that pain
Absolutely.
like a heavy coat.
Absolutely. This year, and I think I talked about this in one of the previous ones, I don't remember which one, but Nick would have turned 21 this year, and I made it a point to not go to the bar and drink myself into a stupor because I've done that so many times in the years before. I could easily have done it again. I wanted to spend this time on his birthday just enjoying the memories and the thoughts of him.
Absolutely.
I found that I don't necessarily always need a reason to go drink myself into a stupor, but that one would have been I think it would have been that excuse to do it.
Yeah, I agree. So I kind of the whole deal where we all get together every year, nearly every year, to celebrate his birthday, and I think it's a tribute to him that we do that. I think he would be so proud.
Yeah, I think so too.
Can you imagine how crazy he would have gotten on his 21st birthday?
Oh God, there's no way any of us would have survived it.
That's another thing that I have a hard time dealing with is he was so full of life. He walked in a room or in a house and you knew it. You knew he was there.
Yeah, there was no. Oh, is Nick home? No, you knew when he got home.
Yeah, you knew.
He made everybody aware when he got home.
He was so full of life, and he would. You know how he was. You said it best the other day. He'd crash through the door and walk through the house. He'd look at me. He'd be like, "Hey, Marty," and off he'd go. And he was so full of life. I think all of us. Andrew's so quiet and reserved, and Nicholas was just the opposite. And I miss that so much about him. I get a little bit of it with Austin, and I think Austin's going to be the same way. Crash through the door and bounce through the house and off to do what he does,
Right.
For a little guy, he did make a lot of noise.
And I gotta say one thing while I'm remembering it. Are we going to talk about memories?
Absolutely.
Funny memories?
Absolutely.
The funniest memory I have of Nicholas is him and Matthew were fighting. I made both of them go to the room. Well, the rooms were not right next to each other. The doors were right next to each other, so I made them both go to each of their rooms, which they did. So I went off and did something. I came back like 10 minutes later. So they're both hanging out of their doors in the hallway, playing on their Nintendos, and they got one foot in the door. So they're still in their room. So that's how they got around it. So they were fighting. They got in trouble for fighting each other. Well, as soon as they got in trouble for it, now all of a sudden they're friends again. And that's how they dealt with that. That was classic Nicholas. He always found a way around everything.
Oh, he was always looking for a loophole, that's for sure.
I wonder who else does that, Andrew.
I have no idea who you're referring to.
Lawyers.
Lawyers, yes, lawyers. So you brought up Matthew, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I talked a little bit about Chloe, and Chloe and Matthew are a year apart in age. She was a year younger than Matthew, right?
Right.
And so I know Pam and I made the decision at that time that we weren't going to take Chloe up to the room to see Nicholas because we thought it would be a really bad idea for her at that age to go up and see him. Can you talk a little bit about that, Marty? What the process was for you and Christine, and how you guys how you view that, and I know you guys didn't take Matthew up there, but
Right.
if you can talk us through that.
Yeah, so we made pretty much the same decision you did. Of course, like you said, there's no rule book. There's no guide to even begin to tell you how to do things. So Matthew was 8, and we had decided the same thing. We had decided. I guess we sheltered him, for lack of a better word, from, you wonder at that time, is he too young to go up there and watch his older brother pass away?
But that's a good point, Marty.
Was it the right decision to make? To this day, I can't tell you. I can't. I think it was at that time. I don't know that he would have. I don't know that he would have gained anything with going up there at his age and seeing Nicholas like that. So at this point in his life, the last time he saw Nicholas, he was alive.
I think him and Chloe probably share a little bit of that same mindset. I was speaking to Chloe, was angry, and probably still is to this day a little bit because she didn't get to go up there. And I think they feel like, and I can't speak for Matthew, I don't know if you shared those feelings, but I know Chloe feels like we cheated her out of something. Maybe she didn't get that closure that she was looking for at that time. I don't know. Has Matthew ever mentioned anything like that to you, Marty?
No, he's never voiced any resentment over it. Guess that would probably be a good question to ask him at some point.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. And at his age, I mean, maybe he will be willing to have that conversation. Maybe not. Teenagers are a little bit different breed. They tend to sometimes, they don't want to share, and it's not because they don't feel it. I think sometimes they're afraid.
Yeah.
Or they get this in their head that if they talk about their feelings that they're less cool, maybe. That's not always the case. Sometimes I think they just don't understand them, and they don't want to feel them.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I think sometimes they're still having trouble processing. I know I did when I was a teenager. So.
Well, that, and I think another part of it is that when you're the teenager in the family or whatever, and we see you guys going through something, sometimes it's kind of like, I want to bring this up and maybe make it worse for them. Or I do think you're right that there's kind of a fear with that. It's like, I don't want to make it worse than it already is.
Do you, Andrew and Aaron, do you guys feel like if you wouldn't have been up there to see him, do you feel like you would have been cheated out of closure?
I don't think there would have been any way you would have stopped me from coming up there. I was going to go up there whether you wanted me to or not.
But just
How old were you, Aaron?
I was 16.
So he was at an age where he was capable of making his own decisions.
right. What about you, Andrew?
I just turned 15. I would have been up there as well.
I would have brought you.
Probably.
We would have conspired.
Yeah.
Well, you still do.
And that was a tough call, Kay. That was a tough call to decide whether to take Matthew up there or not. And I feel your pain on that. It was a tough call, but that's the call we made, and I still to this day think it was a good call. I don't think, like I said, at that age he would have gotten anything out of that. I don't think he would have understood what was going on.
And that was our fear with Chloe, too. I didn't think she would have understood. I think that I really thought it would probably end up hurting her more than it would have helped her. I don't think she had the capability to process at that point what was actually going on.
Yeah. So today, last time Matthew saw Nicholas, he was alive.
Right. Same with Chloe. We both had to go home.
And I can live with that.
Yeah, I can too. I know Chloe she was angry for a long time, and she wanted the full story. There was parts of it I wasn't willing to tell her when she was so little. And when she got older, I did share with her. I can't speak to whether or not it actually helped her or not. I think it was just a morbid curiosity on her part that she felt like she wanted to know the whole story. Everybody else that did, she wanted to know too. But I don't want to assume what her feelings are either. Maybe it did help her. Maybe it gave her a little bit of peace of mind now that she knew everything that happened. I agree with you, Marty. I think that we made the best decision in a moment that we could. It was about protecting them as much as we could, considering the circumstances that everybody was going through.
Yeah. So that goes to the whole time, the 3 days of hell that we all went through. I don't know what we would have done without our kids. I don't know what I would have done without Andrew and Brittany and Aaron. I don't know we'd have done without them up there. It comforted me that they were there.
Yeah, me too.
I remember leaving at one point. Like I said, I have no comprehension of a timeline. I remember leaving at one point and going home and showering. This is like the next day. This is like the middle of the night the next night. And I remember going home, showering, and go home, shower, go right back, right?
Yep, that's exactly what we did.
And I remember, I think you were in there when I left, and I remember coming back, and I walked into the room, and the only person in the room was Brittany. And she was sitting on the floor, their knees folded up to her chest, with her arms folded around her knees and her head in her arms, and wasn't sleeping. She was just sitting there, and it broke my heart, because it was the definition of what we all felt.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I remember that exactly. She sat against that wall on the floor with her knees pulled up and her arms around her knees like that, and she didn't move. And I remember Aaron and Andrew snuck off and they did that Caring Bridge page. I still have the login for that. I go look at that every now and again.
I haven't looked at it in quite a while. I should take a peek at it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't view it as a bad thing anymore. I enjoy going back and looking at some of the comments and the memories and stuff.
Did you view it as bad before?
Oh, if I wanted to torture myself in the beginning, I would go read all that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, when I wanted to not hurt myself physically, but if I wanted to make sure I was really feeling it and hurting, and maybe in my own mind I had to hurt enough to pay a penance, right? Because I felt a lot of guilt because I couldn't save him. Although I did.
But you have to realize, Kay, nobody could save him.
Right. Yeah, and I know that now. And I even knew it back then.
Yeah.
But there was still, I think you mentioned something earlier when we were talking upstairs, Marty. You talked that survivor's guilt.
Right.
And I think that's a good point because a lot of us, we've continued to live our lives, and it's hard. And sometimes maybe we do feel a little bit guilty. It took a long time to feel okay with laughing again.
Yes, I agree.
It took a long time.
You didn't think you were supposed to.
Right. I mean, we faked it really good sometimes. Sometimes you had to laugh because, you didn't consciously make yourself laugh. It was just funny. You laughed, but then afterwards you were like, oh, you almost felt guilty when you did that.
Right.
Then I think over time I've learned that that is okay.
Yeah. It was difficult to get there. It was difficult to feel okay to laugh again. It was difficult to feel okay to be happy.
Yeah. And it's been a rough patch.
Because you know, in my mind, I didn't know how long I was supposed to grieve. Turns out I'm still grieving to this day.
Yeah, and I think we'll grieve for a lifetime.
Exactly.
Right.
I think we learn to live with it.
Yes.
I don't feel like I'll ever, I don't have a choice to accept it, but I don't know in my heart that I'll ever accept it. Make any sense?
Yeah, it does. I think to accept it means we are okay with it. I think in my mind, and I'm not okay with it. I've never been okay with it.
No, absolutely not.
I know it happened. Get it. I'll never be okay with it. I've just had to learn how to live with it, and I do think you're right. We've grieved every day since that's happened. And that's why I think it's good for us guys to get together and kind of talk about that, because sometimes we put a really good, strong mask on. You can't tell that we're in pain.
Right.
We fake it really well a lot of times, and in some cases we don't. And I think the times that we don't, and when our emotions finally kind of manifest, people don't know how to react to that.
I feel like those 3 days in June, it's really a time in my mind. It's a dark place that I don't visit very often. I remember Nicholas. I think of Nicholas every day. I'm telling you, not a day goes by where at some point he doesn't cross my mind.
Yeah.
Not a day goes by. Every day. But I think that.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think if I didn't think about him every day, at least in some form or another, whether there's some event that triggers a memory, or I just get up in the morning and I walk by his picture and I just have some random memory pop into my head, or I was actually got this external drive working and I was watching some videos just so I could hear him, and I did get some feedback on Facebook regarding that, and we've talked about forgetting what he sounds like. And somebody said, if you can find some sound bites, it would be great to put him on the podcast so not only we can hear him, everybody else can hear how amazing he was too.
Yeah.
But
so I guess, like I said, those 3 days were very dark days that I don't go to very often. But I live every day with the great times we had with him, because even when you were mad at him, he still made me laugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just, and I guess the point I'm trying to make is, I grieve for him every day, but I focus on the good times. I focus on when we had fun and when we got mad and the normal days. Those 3 days are tough to think about sometimes.
Oh, they're the three, like you said it exactly, the 3 days of hell.
They're the 3 worst days of my life, and I'm sure of all our lives.
So Marty, one of the things I wanted to kind of ask you about, and I've been very honest about, the dark path I took after Nick died and the amount of drinking I did and the self-destructive behavior. We're all clearing our throats now. And I know Andrew talked pretty openly about, his addiction and the dark path he went down, and Aaron did his same thing and in his own way, and his dark path he went down. And if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit and you've alluded to those 3 days of hell, and you've said, you really don't visit that very often, but do you have a time when you were trying to compensate in a different way, whether it be through drinking or drugs or any I don't want to say destructive behavior, but were you acting out because of the pain in a way?
I think I hit the alcohol a little bit. I tried to numb it. Of course, it didn't work. Like I said earlier, Austin kept us on our toes. He was a brand new baby, and I think he kept us on our toes. So I think that kept me distracted from going deeper into a bad place. I probably did a few drugs, specifically marijuana.
The devil's lettuce.
So yeah, I probably did quite a bit of that. I drank a little bit. Like I said, I think Austin kept me occupied and kept me busy, and Matthew was a little guy, and I think my young kids kept me from that going way south. It would have been easy to do. Yeah, a little bit of weed and a bit of alcohol.
To that point, I'm not trying to get into that conversation over the legalization of marijuana and the effects of alcohol versus pot or whatever, but for my own morbid curiosity, did you notice a emotional difference from one to the other? So when you were drinking and versus if you were smoking some weed, did you find better relief one to the other?
I think probably the weed was the thing that made me deal with it a little better.
Did you feel less sad?
No, not at all. The pain was still there. The pain's still there.
Right.
To this day. Maybe it was a temporary relief, but I think, looking back on it now, I think maybe the weed probably did a little worse for me.
Really? How so?
I think it made me think about it more.
Did it make you think about it more than the alcohol did? Because I can tell you when I was drinking, and I mean when I was really drinking, to the point that I was going to the bar and I was ordering me a beer and a Jaeger bomb every time, and I could not drink myself. And but it was amazing because the more I drank, the more energy I had. But I found that the drunker I got, the more pronounced the grief became, and the more pronounced my sadness was. Did you notice a difference between alcohol versus pot when you're doing that, Marty?
Yeah, I think the pot made me feel a little more. I think the pot made me take my mind to a different place. It was easier maybe to take my mind to a different place. The pain was still there, but it's easy to think about other things on the pot. But the alcohol intensified the pain, I think, for me.
Yeah, I would agree. Andrew, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but when you were going through your self-medication, did you notice the same thing?
Yeah, I think for me, whenever I was specifically smoking pot, it made it easier to ignore some of that pain. And just focus on stupid stuff like eating or sleeping or whatever. It was nothing important, but made it easier to ignore some of that pain. Once it kind of progressed for me, I never really had a problem with particularly alcohol, but other things that I did, which I talked about in the last podcast, inevitably, it made it worse because I ignored my feelings for so long. It helped with numbing them. Then I still had to deal with them later whenever I got clean. And that made it, I guess I can't specifically say, but I would imagine it made it a million times worse.
Aaron, did you experience anything similar to that?
No. I don't think I ever used marijuana or anything for anything to deal with losing Nick. I just smoked pot because it was fun.
But okay, so, and I understand that part of it, but when you have smoked pot, okay, maybe in a sad moment, because we've all had moments when we've been trying to have some fun, and the next thing we know, we remember something, we get really sad. Did you ever find a time, whether it was between the pot or the alcohol, that really made your sadness more?
Yeah. Actually, specifically, I sound weird now. I don't know why.
I know. Because I have no idea how to run a soundboard, and I'm pretending.
I think actually, specifically when we had, was it his heaven birthday or was it a birthday party at your guys' old place?
Which old place? We've moved like 14 times in 3 years. Up by ICC?
Yeah.
That was his 18th birthday.
Yeah. So that night specifically, I drank quite a bit. Drank a lot. And we were having this moment where everybody was kind of sharing stories and all that. And I think that one time specifically, I had not really addressed it very much at all up until then. And that one time it all kind of came crashing down on me, and I was like on my knees crying and yelling in the front yard. I think a lot of the overdramaticness of that was because I was very drunk. But
That you've always been a bit of a drama queen.
oh, okay. But
That's what I'm going with.
yeah, that was the one time that I really, really broke down and kind of voiced what was going on in my head to other people. I think I had talked about it before, but I don't think anybody ever thought that I had as much pain going on inside, because I do a pretty good job of putting on a happy face most of the time.
Oh, you mean you do what all of us men do? We fake it?
Exactly.
So that's the
Exactly.
point. So
Right.
that's the point of this podcast, and I always take it. I'm never going to miss the opportunity to talk about it.
Right.
We named it "How Men Grieve" for a reason. I mean, grief is a part of life as we go through A and B, right? But the idea that for men to feel pain and to be open about their pain and to talk about their pain as a taboo is something that we need to get away from, because it only makes it worse for us in the long run.
Right.
I think even now, even to this day, the only people that have seen me cry about this is whoever was surrounding me at the party and my wife. I don't think anybody else, I don't think I've expressed it to anybody else really.
Aaron, do you think after it happened, like, you tried to minimize what you were going through, at least to our parents, just to not put more stress on them or to not make them worry more than they already were? Because I know I absolutely did that.
I think I definitely did that.
I got asked if I was okay probably 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And every time it was, yep, smiled. I don't want to give them more to worry about. I'll handle this however.
That's pretty much hitting the nail on the head right there. I think of myself as kind of a people pleaser a lot of the time.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think I did that a lot. I think we haven't talked about this yet, but you remember when we went and did that family counseling?
Oh my God.
After that?
Yeah, that
was terrible.
Yeah.
It was I think it was too early. It was too early. Oops. It was too early after it happened for us to really go in and be open and honest about it, especially with somebody we had just met. And know that we had a family session, and then he split us up, and it was you and me in a room by ourselves together. And
I remember
he
that
did
part of
this
it.
weird thing where he had us put our hands on our knees, and he tapped our hands.
Was it breaking the beaver dam down and letting the water flow through and the memories flow through like the water? I remember that.
He asked us to relive it and all this, and I know Andrew and I had some sort of twin telepathy moment because he was like, "So do you guys think you're gonna need to come back and do another session with me?" And I don't even know if we looked at each other, but we both were like, "Nope, we're fine, we're good now, thank
so
you."
you touched on that. So Christine and I did counseling as well right after. I set up with this counselor, and anyway. So we go there because we're grieving for Nicholas. That was the whole purpose, is to get counseling because we were grieving for Nicholas. And we got there, and they did the same thing to us. They split us up. She went to one room, and I went to another room. And dude asked me about my marriage and how my marriage was going, and I'm like, "Do you know why I'm here?"
How is that relevant?
So
I'm not here for that.
It was the same thing for us. We finished that, and we never went back. It was laughable. That's not why we were there.
So uncomfortable.
Well, he was just tapping the tops of our hands while trying to stare us in the eyes. I felt creeped out.
Yeah.
It's like, what is this guy trying to do right now? I don't feel like this is therapy by any means.
I didn't know what therapy was, but I don't think that was it either.
Yeah, I had no idea,
And
but it wasn't that.
Didn't we go to some group therapy thing together? Do you remember that?
You know what? That's probably a question we'll ask our wives because they'll remember.
I think we went together.
But we may have. I don't remember that, but we may have. I do remember talking to the high school, and we got that counselor involved with Andrew and Aaron. And I know there for a while you guys said you did enjoy going there, but it wasn't for a very long time.
I forgot I even did that.
And Matthew had gotten counseling at school as well.
Right, and so did Chloe. She worked with the counselor for several years.
I think it was another one of those things where I maybe went twice to the counseling appointment. Now, I did join both joined it. There was that group grief counseling club thing almost that we did.
I don't think I ever went to that. I
You
remember
went?
signing up for it, but I'm not sure that I ever went, maybe one time.
I think you went once, and I don't think you went back, but I continued to go, and that was better for me than any of the other things that I did.
So that was just basically people that we went to school with getting together and talking about the grief that they're experiencing personally, or
Yeah.
okay.
Do you guys ever like compare your loss to other people's losses and think, well, that's not as bad as mine?
No, I make a very conscious effort not to do that.
Yeah.
No, I don't either. I relate to their loss.
Yeah, exactly. And as a matter of fact, I correct them if they say, well, my loss isn't as great as yours. And I say, well, that's not true because your loss feels as painful to you as mine probably did to me. So don't minimize that. I do correct
Right.
people on that.
And I feel the same way now, but I remember going to that group and having that thought in my head. I think one person had lost a grandparent, and I remember in my head like,
That's nothing.
Yeah. And then I think another person was in there for a pet, and I was like, what? Uh-oh.
You know,
Who didn't sign?
That wasn't me. Mine's on silent.
Was it Marty?
Already got the voicemail.
That's all right.
It's okay.
I'm just messing with you, but no.
so I forgot where I was going with it.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. We'll pick it back up. You'll remember. I remember me and Pam. There was a particular group that we tried out at one point, and I'm not going to name them. And we went to the first meeting, and the 2 hours we were there, everybody shared their story of loss. Went around the whole room, right? And my God, when I left there, I felt worse than I did when I got there. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. But I did realize something about what I'd went through. I thought it was probably the worst thing that I could have ever gone through in my life. And I realized that night listening to a particular couple's story, it wasn't. Only time it could ever be worse is if I lost a second child. And there was a couple in there that had lost 3.
All at the same time?
No, at different times throughout their lives.
Wow.
And I thought, well, when I didn't think it could get any worse, it certainly let me know, even though I'm going through something horrific, it still can get worse. So
Absolutely.
I need to get better at handling what I was doing. Now, I didn't. I will tell you, I really started getting better. And then my nephew died, and then I spiraled in a quick, fat, and in a hurry way downward until I hit rock bottom again, and I wasn't faked it worked really well, got through it. But from a personal relationship standpoint, I was a disaster.
And that was 2 years ago?
Yes, 2017.
Yeah.
I did the burial service for him, and he's buried. He's laid to rest right next to Nicholas, and he's laid to rest with my dad. And I don't regret doing it, and I was happy that I did it because I wanted to had the opportunity maybe to give some advice to my sister and talk her through it a little bit, at least try to give her something. But I didn't realize the effect on me that it would have.
Do you think you were at a point where you tried to be strong?
Yes.
Try to be the strong one and, be the big brother, and do you think you tried to hide your grief?
Absolutely. I did exactly what I did with Nicholas. I did the exact same thing. I do what men do. I tried to hide my grief. I tried to bury it. I tried to be the strong guy and try to be...
Because we're supposed to be the strong one.
Right. We're supposed to be that. We're not supposed to feel that. Or if we do, we're certainly not supposed to share it. So everybody else can.
And I don't know if people really expect that stereotype or if we bring that on ourselves.
I think we pass it along.
I was actually just going to ask you that. Was that something that you guys felt like you were taught growing up?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Men don't cry, men don't
When I
feelings.
grew up, my dad was the head of the family and the strong one, and made all the hard decisions. And yeah, I think that's exactly right.
I think our dads did, and my dad was the same way. So I was raised by my stepdad, right? And he was tough. And that guy was tough. And emotion was allowed. Men didn't do that. We didn't cry. We had to be tough all the time, no matter what. But the thing that we didn't see from our dads was the times that maybe they weren't tough and they did it behind the bedroom door.
Absolutely.
They just didn't show it in front of us. But they had it.
I think maybe I saw my dad cry once, maybe twice in my whole life.
Andrew and Aaron actually brought that up. You guys said you had never seen me cry up until that happened.
Yeah, I never had.
I don't think I even saw you cry when it happened. Maybe when they called his time of death?
Well,
I don't know that I actually ever witnessed it.
I think the times that I was more referring to was after Aaron and him and everybody had moved out. You were there by yourself for the most part. I mean, I was there sometimes, but not really.
yeah, well, you were to be a dad, man. You were busy.
I was. I think that's probably whenever I noticed it the most, and we had more conversations about it, and I witnessed more than I had before, I think.
That was probably my lowest.
Yeah.
Where was your lowest, Marty? Do you remember? Or do you feel like you've had the lowest?
I think I've had a couple. I think my lowest was the Wednesday when we said goodbye to him. And the last time we seen him, we all said goodbye to him and we all went home. Went straight to my bedroom, but I cried for an hour. I mean, hard cry. I may get a tear every now and then, but that day I hard cried. And I think the second lowest was, I think the day we buried him.
Do you remember a lot about the visitation?
A little bit. I remember it was a marathon.
Couldn't believe the amount of people that came out to that.
It was a marathon. That I remember. I remember his baseball team coming in, the whole
baseball
team
in uniform.
Yeah.
His lacrosse team came through.
Yeah.
They're the ones that gave us them pictures and then the videos of him.
Yeah. And the jerseys.
Yeah, and the jerseys.
The jerseys we have hanging on the walls?
We do. We have them hanging on the walls right there.
And I do. I remember that was a marathon, and I remember all the people, and I remember how hard it was, and that was difficult. I remember George standing behind us all night.
Yes, he did. All night long. And took care of every one of us. Asked if we needed water, if we needed a break,
Yeah.
whatever we needed. He was there.
And I do remember a lot about the visitation. Incredible amount of people, and it was a long night.
I was exhausted.
Me too. I think we all were.
Taking it back a little bit, though, I touched base on this, I don't know, in the previous podcast, when we were talking previously, Marty, when we were talking about making those phone calls. I was surprised because I hadn't posted anything on Facebook, right? I could not believe the amount of posts I had on my page the next day about losing Nicholas. And I'm like, I hadn't even posted anything yet. How fast this travels. And I hadn't told anybody.
Yeah, but I think so. I don't pretend to know where all your friends come from, but Nicholas, I think, was a pretty popular kid.
Yes, he was.
I think if he would have lived, I think he would have owned Washington.
Oh my God, he knew everybody between our houses.
I think news travels fast. I think that news probably traveled fast because he knew a lot of people, and he was a popular little boy.
I couldn't believe how many people he knew that we had never even heard of. People that showed up to the visitation oh yeah, I know him from this or this, and it's like, I've never even seen you before.
He stops by our house, and when he's riding over to your house to just say hi sometimes, and Yeah, I remember that happening quite a bit.
But yeah, I think, and for me, my grief for Nicholas, especially for Nicholas, I've lost my dad, and my dad was my mentor, Me and my dad had finally come to a point in our life where we were very, very close, and that was a hard loss. I've lost my mother-in-law, Dorothy, who was a wonderful, wonderful woman. And I grieve for them, but those are, I don't want to.
They're the circle of life.
Exactly.
That's exactly how I look at that too. I lost.
I don't want to say you expect it and then not diminish the impact that had on me of losing those people. My dad, my mother-in-law, and my grandmas, my grandpas, who were wonderful people and I was very close with. But you're right, it's a circle of life.
You grow up thinking you're going to bury your parents. You never grow up thinking you're going to bury your children.
Exactly. And for this, the grief I carry for Nicholas this day is alive and well.
Yeah, I don't know if my grief has ever gotten less, or so the fact that I've just learned how to live with it on a daily basis.
Exactly. I like I said, a day goes by where he doesn't cross my mind at some point. It's usually in the morning when I first get up. One of the first things I think of is we've chosen in our home, and you have too, to put mementos of him everywhere.
Yes.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
I think remembering him a taboo would be a giant mistake. I think we should remember him. I think we should talk about him. I think we should share memories of him, and I think he should still be a very big part of our lives every day.
And you touched on one of your other podcasts about forgetting what he sounds like. I can hear his voice in my head to this day. I can hear his voice in my head to this day. It's so clear, and you were absolutely right on touching on that. I worry about not hearing that voice anymore.
Right, and that's a big fear. I was talking to you guys that I was listening to some videos. I finally got this external hard drive to work, and we've got them. So I'm gonna spend some time trying to get some voice clips of him so we can share him on a podcast so everybody else can kind of hear what he sounded like too. Not that he was super unique, but he was Nick. To us, he was super unique. He had that weird raspy voice. I wish I could have had a voice bite of him when he had his headset.
His headgear?
Yes, his headgear before brace. Pinkos. I think, Marty, I'm glad you were here for this cast. I think it was good to get your perspective and your viewpoints on how we all traveled. And it's, in a lot of ways, it's been very similar. Not just from me and you from being the dad's perspective, but also from Andrew and Aaron from a sibling side, the brother side. I think it would be great if we could maybe work on talking with Matthew and seeing if he would be willing to come in and kind of share his perspective. And I think what we're probably going to end up doing, guys, is we may bring the other siblings because there's, more than just these two.
Absolutely.
And we're going to get their perspective too, just kind of get a full picture of what we went through. I know the podcast is How Men Grieve, but I think we would be doing injustice to our listeners if they didn't get the full story. And then I will say, Marty, if you could share this with your friends or family, we are looking to do a podcast of all of us sharing our favorite memories of Nicholas. So if any friends or family or cousins or whoever has a memory, they could either, comment on our Facebook page, which is How Men Grieve, or at our email address, which is howmengrieve@gmail.com. And we're going to take some time and we're going to spend maybe 30 minutes, 45, whatever it is, and we're going to share those memories. And I think it would be good to kind of lighten the mood a little bit. You know, we've really done pretty deep in these first few podcasts. So Aaron had the idea to do that, and I think it'd be good. So if you could spread the word on that, that'd be great. I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And thank you for being here. I know this was not an easy thing for you to do. I know it probably took you out of your comfort zone.
It did, but I really appreciate the opportunity. Like I said, I don't visit the dark places very often. I focus on the good times I had with Nicholas, and I think that's how I deal with my grief. I try to focus on the good times we had with him, and which were a lot. And I really appreciate you letting me come here and share this with you.
It's been our pleasure.
Absolutely. Real quick, I know we're kind of coming to an end, but I did want to say something to you, Marty. I've shared before the show that I kind of struggle with blaming myself for not getting up and going sooner. And when you came and picked us up, I voiced that, and you were the first person through the whole thing to tell me that it was not my fault and that I was not the reason that this was happening. And I just want to thank you for being that first person to put that in my head.
It was the truth.
I know.
We all know now nobody could have saved him.
I know. But I just wanted to thank you for being that first person to let me know that it wasn't me. And I appreciate it. I love you.
Love you too, bud.
Yeah, I think this, I think we've all been very blessed to be able to have our families come together. And we all spent time before, but in this tragic event, it's only brought us all closer. And our love for one another is incredible. You know, and I'm blessed to have you, Marty, and Christine, and Matthew, and Austin, and your whole family, and my whole family in my lives.
Feel the same.
Yeah. Andrew, any closing remarks from you? I can't see you shrugging your shoulders, Andrew.
I think you have a record low number of words said in this episode.
Yeah, this is probably record setting. I think there was probably no more than, I'm going to say 20. No, I bet it's more than 20.
Maybe 50.
50.
Less than 50.
I'm going to try to count them when I do the editing.
Do it.
I don't know. I said a lot the last episode, so I'm kind of...
Well, you did. All right. Well, we're going to close this episode. We want to thank our listeners for taking the time to listen to How Men Grieve, and we appreciate it. And stay tuned for more.
Don't forget to like and subscribe and review.
Yeah.
Yeah, that.